You have questions and we've got some answers.
Welcome to Q&A with A&D. All right, Desiree. So we speak about different dance environments in our classes, in our workshops. The street world versus the studio world. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, the street life. Hey, it's the only way. No, but a lot of people, when we talk about the street life, the street world, we're talking about when you're learning dance outside of a studio environment, right? When you learn the dance in the kitchen, when you learn at the club,
family party,
with the family, in the basement, right? You learned it outside of a traditional dance class studio environment, right? So that's the street world. And in that world, it's the pedagogy that you might be familiar with, Afro-Latin dance festival goer, is not the same pedagogy that you understand, right? It might be two different things, right? They're learning it from someone else, a cousin, a brother, a fiance, abuelita, whatever environment they're in, right? They're learning it from in the streets, right?
And it's a very organic progression, right?
Organic,
in terms of like how the dance evolves, how the moves are being like learned from one dance partner to another.
And a lot of times it's just show and tell. It's like, do this, okay? And you grow up doing this. This is more, a lot of the time it's more of a cultural tie, implemented in their culture. They learned salsa in Puerto Rico, they're Cuban, they're Honduran, they're Panamanian. They learned it as a part of their daily life, or as a part of their culture, right? The way that they speak, it's all integrated. So oftentimes when people are street dancers, it's a really deep connection that they have to the dance and the music. When we talk about the studio world, now we're talking about, let's say, Albert, who he went to the happy hour and he saw that there was a bachata class, and he's like, oh wow, and the teacher invited him to learn more about bachata. He didn't know anything about bachata, so now he's going to the dance studio to learn this dance of bachata that he had no reference of before. And this is just one example, right? And now he's in the dance studio and he's learning 1, 2, 3, tap, 1, 2, 3, in a very formulated way, in a very simulated way, right?
In a very codified
way. In a very codified way, meaning that the dance teacher has kind of created a system of these are the most important things in bachata to learn for you to be able to do this
in a very stripped down
way, to be able to do this later on when you want to. Now, they might say wherever you're dancing bachata, but sometimes, and what's happening now in 2024, is that those studio worlds are only teaching people how to dance with other studio dancers, right? And
also teaching the dance from their perspective.
Their perspective.
I think is really important.
Their perspective, but not even lending any breath or any like room for outside perspectives, right? To be like, this is interpretable. Like you might be able to dance like this, or like this, or like this, or like this, versus just this is the right way, this is the wrong way. And sometimes with right or wrong, because this is an art, right? It's a dance, and it is tied to culture, there is no right or wrong way.
I think it's also important to note that in the studio setting, in the studio world, and I think I wrote a post about this, where essentially you're getting people who understand the dance, right, to a point where they understand the music, the counting, the rhythms, they understand the concept of weight transferring, the level of tension, the different elements of footwork. So these individuals are going into the street world and they're looking at what dancers do, and they observe the dance for, maybe a period of time. time, and they might be focused on just a few set of dancers. And so from that, they will take, for example, okay, what is that dancer doing for 70% of the time? We're gonna call that a basic. They're stepping 3 times, we're gonna call that a basic. And then this particular dancer might always tap on the 4th beat, right? On the 4th and the 8th beat. So we're gonna say, okay, the basic is 3 consecutive steps followed by a tap, right? And so what that dancer is going to do is they're going to go into the studio and they're going to say, okay, what's the easiest way to put that into a system? We're going to say go left and right, then go forward and back, then do it in a circle, then do it in place. And so this is how we create, like we codify per se the dance. However, I think that the research is constant and it's continuous, because it's important for us as instructors to also look at the way that dance is danced, not just by a certain set of dancers, but also by other dancers and also different environments. For example, they may dance one way in a particular environment, like a club setting, but maybe they're not seeing how it's danced at home, or maybe they're not seeing how it's danced in a different city. And so it's important to really expand and understand dance in a broader perspective so that it becomes a little bit more universal and they're able to transmit that information, one, in different ways, and also to different people, and understand and make it clear that there are choices, right? We start at a base, but then there's stylistic choices that can be made to color the dance a bit.
And I've said this before too, about sometimes in the studio world, it being so stripped down to those 3 taps that you're not able to add back in the zhuzh of the dance. Whereas sometimes learning the dance from the street, it's more spherical learning, right? We're learning in total. You're learning everything at once, plugged in with the feelings, right? So it's also the joy is inherent in the dance, right? Or the feelings are very present when learning the steps. And sometimes that is separate in the dance studio world, right? So sometimes you can feel a very disconnect between how you feel and what the dance is.
The cadence, the nuances, those details are, I think, even just as important, if not more important, right? Because so much of a dance, especially when we're talking about these cultural dances, have to do with the essence of the dance and what it feels like and what it looks like. And those little details are what separate it from it being, like you said, like super dry and flat and very systematic versus like, ooh, you're in the pocket.
Yeah, the pocket. That's a whole nother. We're gonna have to do another video on the pocket. Stop. The other thing I was gonna say is 2024, now we have the onset of all of these amazing music and dance festivals and all of these competitions, right? And with the onset of that, there's been an onslaught of new bachata instructors and new bachata social dance artists who are really pushing the dance and stretching the dance in different ways. And especially the competitors. So often, you'll show a video to somebody from the street world and they'll be like, what is that? It's a very big gap between what's happening and a very big disconnect in terms of visual presentation of what bachata is looking like today, because of the ways that the social dance studio world is pushing bachata and stretching it because of the supply and demand, I think.
Yeah, and I think as instructors, our responsibility, because we're part of, we have insight into both worlds, right? I started off as a street dancer and then evolved into more of a studio instructor / dancer. I think it's really important to be very careful with the words that we use and avoiding blanket statements like, you can't do this is definitely that. And if we speak to nuances and cadences and techniques that are being used in the dance, that we have enough context and understanding, both technical and culturally, before we speak on these dances, because I think that we are in the age of misinformation, and it's really important to be clear and careful with the words we use and avoiding blanket statements so that we don't continue to perpetuate misinformation.
Misinformation or just appropriation, right, of what the culture is. So there's definitely a difference between the street world and the Afro-Latin social dance world. But I think it's really important, if you dance bachata, you should be able to dance bachata with everybody.